hanging half 100 on them at Owen Field, or the run rules on the diamond at Love's Field. We're giving you the breakdowns, the bets, and the hot takes from the perspective of two former OU Athletics employees. You're listening to the Mainline Podcast with Tyler Burton and Adam Jaquez.
Let's go! Let's go! Go!
Let's go. It's the Mainline Podcast. I'm Adam Jaquez. He's Tyler Burton. It's a stickball exclusive show tonight. Not a whole lot going on in the world of football, so we'll be talking pretty much all softball, the regional, how the Big 12 championship and the tournament played out there in Oklahoma City at now Devon Park, as it's called. And then, of course, talking a lot about baseball. A lot of people interested in what's going on down at L. Dale Mitchell. I guess the last regular season game of the year has already concluded there, but it will not be the last game at L. Dale Mitchell this spring. So excited to get all into it. Tyler, how are you this evening?
I'm good, Adam. Things are good out here in Denver, Colorado. NBA, it's looking a little bit better for the Nuggets. Colorado Avalanche, on the other hand, within the NHL, kind of feels like we're one day away from hockey season being over out here in the Mile High City. But, Adam, things are good out here. Excited to actually it's going to be kind of a quick episode tonight. I can't remember the last time that we actually had an episode where there wasn't any football or basketball discussion. So, but rightfully so, both of these stickball teams are playing fantastic softball and baseball right now in across the country, with some big expectations going into the postseason for softball ultimately, but also baseball kind of doing what they're supposed to be doing ultimately, to not just lock up, possibly being a regional host, but possibly finding their way into a top 8 seed to where things look really good for this baseball team and the fan base going forward. But yeah, Adam, excited to get down to Oklahoma. I'm actually going to be able to partake with Sooner Nation into one of the softball games on Saturday. Lord willing, we'll see what time and what the opponent's going to be. But little sister's getting married on Friday night, so making the trip down. It's going to be a lot of fun. Excited to dive into it.
You're going to miss the Cleveland State game.
I'm going to miss the Cleveland State game. I'm actually a little bit nervous. I'm actually officiating the wedding. So
are you really?
Yeah, so I'm
okay.
I'm not. I don't know. It's kind of 1A, 1B officiant bride. So don't let her know that. But all eyes going to be on me. Kind of how it should be.
All right. So if you need someone to officiate your wedding, at Tyler Burton 7 on Twitter, and
took
Tyler
about
will do it for
took,
free, right?
Took me about 5 minutes online to get ordained as a licensed minister. So yeah, we're ready to rock and roll. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Well, let's dive into a little bit of what happened this past weekend up in Oklahoma City for the softball team. Oklahoma plows through everybody. No contest really against Kansas or Baylor, or BYU rather, run ruling both of those teams. And then getting the rematch that I think we all really wanted. We would have liked to have seen OSU the game before that as well, but getting the rematch against Texas, evening up the overall 2-2 record on the year against the Longhorns, and taking the Big 12 tournament championship along the way. And they looked really impressive throughout. Only 7 hits surrendered by the entire pitching staff over the weekend. I think you'll take that pretty much any time, and really no doubt against Texas on Saturday night to wrap things up. So a really impressive weekend for the ladies up in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, we saw the return of elite softball play. Adam, one of my favorite topics, whenever softball season does come around, is being able to come on here each and every week and talk about how well the girls played, how well they swung the bat, and, really how big of a scoring margin it was between Oklahoma and the opponent. And make no mistake about it, they were absolutely dominant over the weekend up in Oklahoma City, outscoring their 3 opponents in the tourney, 28-4. And, Adam, we went into the, matchups last weekend talking about how does Oklahoma, kind of refine their swagger? How do they get back into, playing, Oklahoma softball, whether it's dominant defense, elite pitching in the circle, explosive bats top to bottom 1 through 9. And this was really the first time in quite a while, especially against a team like Texas, who is the number 1 overall seed going into the postseason play. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. But the lineup woke up at just the right amount of time, the aggressive at the plate, swinging at pitches early in the count, hitting for extra bases, stealing bases, being aggressive on the base path when the ball is put into play. And the biggest part for me, Adam, was putting pressure on the opponents to make a play when the ball's put in to play. And we've talked about, Adam, kind of the theme of what's kind of plagued this lineup and this Oklahoma softball team in their 6 losses this season was the fact that they were not able to come up with the timely hit when it mattered the most. And again, anytime that you're outscoring 3 opponents over the course of a weekend, 28-4, you're obviously doing something right. But especially in that matchup where, there was a lot of pressure, the college softball world, all eyeballs were on that Big 12 championship matchup against Texas. And you come out there and you really kind of set the tone from the opening pitch. Kelly Maxwell was able to go out there and get a scoreless first inning. Jada Coleman's able to reach on a base. Ella Parker singles, and then Tiare Jennings missed 300 here. She gets her 300th hit and really is able to put Oklahoma ahead in the first inning, which gives that lineup a ton of confidence, gives that defense a ton of confidence, and it takes a lot of pressure off of Kelly Maxwell in the circle. She's able to kind of catch her breath, exhale a little bit, and really that just kind of put Oklahoma in the driver's seat going forward, where they were the more aggressive team on Saturday up in Oklahoma City, and that's what we've come to expect from this program. It's really kind of been their bread and butter, what it takes for them to be so dominant over the last decade in college softball. And if they can build on what they did in Oklahoma City over the last 3 games, then make no mistake about it, they are peaking at the right time. This is exactly the type of softball that you want to play heading into postseason.
Something we've talked about for maybe the last month or so is like, who is the second best pitcher on this team, and who's the arm that Oklahoma's going to go to? And I don't feel like we got much of an answer of that, because the week before we had Carly Keeney, who looked pretty solid against Oklahoma State down in Norman. She didn't see the mound, or I guess the circle, at all in Oklahoma City. Monticelli, she came in against Kansas, finished that one off. Kirsten Deal was solid against BYU. And then Nicole May, got a couple good innings out of her on Saturday against Texas to round things out there, to probably build back some confidence there, because she's going to be one that you'll need in the postseason. If you're going to make a run to Oklahoma City and make some noise in the World Series, you're going to need Nicole May to have some moments along the way. So I don't know. It feels murky, and I don't know how much value to put into wins over Kansas and BYU, knowing that those teams are not necessarily the elite of softball world.
Right. But I mean, also at the same time, I totally get where you're coming from, Adam, but also at the same time, you can only perform against the opponent that's put out there in front of you on the field. So you got to give these girls a lot of credit. Obviously, Kelly Maxwell goes out there and pitches extremely well on Thursday. And then Kirsten Deal is able to back up that performance on Friday with, what was ultimately one pitch away from throwing a no-hitter against BYU. She ultimately, leads Oklahoma to a run rule victory, pitching extremely well. And that set things up for Kelly Maxwell in the circle against Texas, kind of the team that everybody's familiar with. You lose 2 out of 3 down in Austin earlier in the year. They're the number 1 team in the country right now. Oklahoma failed to win the Big 12 championship during the regular season. So now this was ultimately your final opportunity, to win this conference for the 9th and final time. And Oklahoma was able to do that, led by Kelly Maxwell, who threw 5 1/3 inning, only gave up 1 earned run, 2 hits, 7 strikeouts. And the thing that I liked the most about Kelly's performance in the circle was the amount of times that she was able to pitch ahead in the account. First pitch strikes, get yourself into a 1-2 count, not having to play catch up or pitch from behind, where it puts the hitter in a much more advantageous situation. So I liked what I saw from Kelly Maxwell. And then the best part about it, Adam, and I think I know that you didn't mean to gloss over this. I know you mentioned it just a little bit, but I think that Nicole May, we weren't necessarily sure why Patty made the decision to pull Kelly Maxwell in that situation, but you send Nicole May out there in the 6th inning, and she puts together what was probably her most dominant performance. I know it was just 5 outs, but it was the most dominant that I think that she's looked in the circle all season long, recording the last 5 outs, 3 of which coming from the K factor. So I like what I saw from this Oklahoma pitching staff. And the best part about it, Adam, is even though it was Kansas, even though it was BYU, and not to take anything away from Texas, and I know that a lot of people probably think that, okay, well, it maybe wasn't the best competition to really gauge, the performances from a Kirsten Deal or a Kelly Maxwell. I like where this pitching staff is at. And if you're Patty Gasso, if you're Jenna Rocha, if you're just an Oklahoma softball fan in general, what had to happen over the course of the weekend in the Big 12 tournament did happen. The bats got fired up. The pitching was dominant. The defense was elite, like we've seen at Oklahoma. Everything is coming together at the exact time that it's supposed to. Now you find yourself hosting a regional this upcoming weekend, trying to make another run to OKC.
Yeah, and I think on the offensive side of things too, Ella Parker, Cassidy Pickering, both of them have been very good in their freshman campaigns this year, but it also feels like they're hitting their stride and they are elevating their game here as we go into the postseason. So other than, I think, Sydney Sanders, who we did see in the highlight reel earlier for those watching on YouTube, she had a great hit there against Texas. Other than that, and, she's got power, like she's dangerous. She's going to go yard at certain points and have big hits. There's not really any dead spots on this lineup at the moment. So I think you feel pretty confident with where offense is trending. I'd still like to see more, but we have a small sample size of really the last 4 games or so where you're saying, okay, yeah, we are getting the timely hitting. We are looking a lot more like what we were the previous 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you look at the performance of this lineup over the course of the Big 12 tournament, obviously, a huge majority of your attention has got to be paid. And, congratulations to the freshman Ella Parker, named the tournament MVP. Anytime that you go 7 for 10 over the course of that series, driving in 5 runs, scoring 6 times, having 3 extra base hits, you're doing something right. So huge shout out to Ella being named tournament MVP. And, Adam, just focusing on the Texas game, because, we're forward thinking here. We're trying to project, this team, their outlook going into, hopefully what is another Women's College World Series where you're going to be going up against elite competition game after game after game. So just focusing on the performance of this lineup against Texas on Saturday, this was fantastic. Obviously, you didn't get. I think that Jada Coleman was able to reach base once. Ultimately, she scored the first run of the game. But even though she was held hitless, you still had 6 of the other 8 girls that were able to record a hit against Texas. We talked about Tiara Jennings, Alyssa Brito, Kinsey Hansen, Sydney Sanders, starting to find her form as well. And then lo and behold, we kind of miss out on the 2 freshmen in Cassidy Pickering and Ella Parker. And oh, by the way, Miss Riley Boone in the 9-hole. Just continuing to be that spark plug for this lineup to kind of get them going. It was just a lot of fun to see, and kind of like we talked about, Adam. I think that a huge part of the problem for this team, and I don't necessarily want to call it a problem, but we talked about expectations in dealing with pressure. And, Patty Gasso, I ultimately, if they go on to win another national championship here, I think that there's going to be a lot of discussion about her overall performance in coaching this team specifically, on how, coming off of 3 consecutive national championships, how do you wake up each and every day and find the motivation to go out there and do it again when you've won 3 straight titles? But, even though they've had some hardships this year, even though it hasn't quite looked as dominant at times like the previous 3 seasons, Patty Gasso continues to push all the right buttons. And if this team can, like I said, build on what they did in Oklahoma City, get on a run here, they're not going to have to leave the state of Oklahoma for another game the rest of the postseason, which is fun to say. I like where this team stands as we kind of move here into regional play this upcoming Friday.
Let's take a look at the path for Oklahoma to get that 4th straight national championship. Let's do this here. For those watching on YouTube, you're seeing the bracket there for postseason. Oklahoma, the number 2 overall seed. Texas gets the number 1 overall seed. I think there was a lot of discussion there. In my mind, I think the committee made the right decision there. They rewarded the year-long play of what Texas did, not just the weekend in Oklahoma City. I think Texas had better, RPI metrics when you look at, okay, they're beating better teams more
top
often.
25 wins.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think they earned it. I don't really have a problem with that. And looking at the draw here for Oklahoma on this side, and Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that, hey, even if Oklahoma makes it out of a super regional matchup with Florida State, their matchups in Oklahoma City would be, the Missouri, maybe UCLA, maybe Tennessee, if we're looking at those seedings. So they're playing everyone on this side of the bracket, the right side for those watching on YouTube. So I think that's actually a really solid draw for OU. You're not going to play Texas. You're not going to play Oklahoma State until the brackets flip in Oklahoma City after, games 1 and 2 there in a World Series potential matchup there. So I think this plays out really well in Oklahoma's favor. You are the number 2 overall seed, so you are going to have a favorable path regardless.
Yeah, and favorable is a unique word to utilize in this situation. Obviously, if Oklahoma is able to make their way out of the Norman Regional, and if everything holds serve down in Tallahassee, then you're going to have a Women's College World Series championship rematch in the Supers in Norman 1 week from this upcoming Friday, which would be a lot of fun to see. 2 of the premier programs in collegiate softball right now in the Sooners, in the Seminoles. So that's going to be a fun matchup if Oklahoma is able to advance to both of those. But Adam, you make a really good point here. I think that one of the things that kind of does fly under the radar a little bit is, especially especially when you've got arguably 3 of the top 5 teams in college softball in Texas, in Oklahoma, in Oklahoma State. The fact that Oklahoma could kind of make their way through a majority of the winners bracket in Oklahoma City at the College World Series without having to play the Longhorns, without having to play the Pokes, 2 teams that are, all too familiar with what Oklahoma, does and what they do well, what their weaknesses are, because they play them, at least 3 times a season, sometimes more, pending conference tournament play. So it's going to be nice for Oklahoma and this pitching staff and, even this lineup as well to kind of get out there and play against some fresh meat, play against some other opponents that aren't quite as familiar with what Oklahoma likes to do. We've seen how dominant Oklahoma can be, once they do get past the regional play, once you find yourself in a super or in a championship series in Oklahoma City where, it's you versus the other opponent, best 2 out of 3. And we know how good Oklahoma is in the postseason play in a best of 3 series. So I like where Oklahoma sits. I like how the bracket's pretty favorable for them. It's just a matter on these girls, to be able to go out there and execute. And that starts this upcoming weekend against Cleveland State.
The title of this episode is 4 straight titles if this happens. And for me, looking at this draw and this side of the bracket, I think OU can kind of develop that second pitcher, that second arm that we've been looking for out of this team as they get to Oklahoma City. Because like you mentioned, you're not going to play Texas. You're not going to play Oklahoma State. The other teams, Florida, I think is pretty good. Stanford is one that, scares Oklahoma fans from last year. I think Tennessee, in my mind, is one that I've got my eye on there. And then, of course, yes, Clemson actually up there as well. Not a national seed, but one that I'm keeping my eye on there. They're in Tuscaloosa at Alabama. Valerie Cagle still there with the Tigers. They didn't have necessarily the year they wanted to out there in Clemson, but dangerous hitters. It's time of year where crazy things happen, upsets happen. So I'm not ruling out the Tigers there, but I think this is a favorable enough draw that by the time Oklahoma could make it to Oklahoma City, you could have established, okay, it's Carly Keeney and Kelly Maxwell, and those are our 1-2, or it's Kelly Maxwell and Kirsten Deal. We just got to figure that out. But also at the same time, we talk about those freshmen filling out the offensive lineup a little bit more effectively and the team overall being more ready to hit the ball when the time calls for it. And it kind of feels like, okay, if we're going to score 10 runs a game, it almost doesn't matter who our second pitcher is at a certain point. So I kind of feel like those are the 2 keys that I'm looking into to say, okay, yeah, if we do that, I'm starting to feel a lot more confident about this team winning 4 straight.
Yeah, that's the big one for me, Adam. I mean, ultimately, you look at this pitching staff, and I know that there's been some highs, there's been their fair share of lows, but when you really try to dissect what Oklahoma has to do from a pitching performance, going through the course of the postseason, ultimately trying to win the program's 4th consecutive national championships, I kind of feel like what you've got in Kelly Maxwell. A bad performance from Kelly Maxwell, you're probably looking at 3 to 4 runs given up. If you've got elite, dominant, Kelly's on her A game, you're talking shutout, you're talking potentially 1 run given up. So what you've got there in Kelly. Then once you move into that kind of 2, 3, 4, I do think that Kirsten Deal did do enough towards the back half of the season to separate herself to be that, kind of that, Robin to Kelly Maxwell's Batman. So I like Kirsten Deal, especially when you talk about the lefty matchup, her being a southpaw in the circle. I like that for her as well. And then, Nicole May, what you've got. I think that, like we talked about, her biggest moment of the year, kind of came right here in the last weekend where she was able to get, 5 of the, the last 5 outs against Texas. Carly Keeney has been a bright spot here over the last couple of weeks as well. It's nice to have that in the bullpen as well for Oklahoma. But here's where it boils down to me, Adam. If Oklahoma swings the bats like Oklahoma does, there's not another team in softball that can beat them. I don't care if they score 3 runs, 4 runs on Kelly Maxwell. I don't care how good of a lineup the other teams have. Oklahoma's pitching staff is good enough to where if Oklahoma just simply can go out there, say average 6 runs a game, if you can go out there, score anywhere from 6 to 10 runs a game, there's not a team on this schedule that Oklahoma is going to face the rest of the way that Oklahoma is not going to be able to contend with at least 2 games out of 3. So again, find the consistent in the circle from this pitching staff. Jenna Rocha, Patty Gasso, they're going to be able to do so. But then it really kind of boils down to this lineup, 1 through 9. We talk about the senior leadership on this team. It's a veteran softball team that's making, going for their 4th consecutive championship. Jada Coleman, Tiari Jennings, Kenzie Hansen, Alyssa Brito, Sydney Sanders, Cassidy Pickering, Ella Parker, Alina Torres, Riley Boone. All of these girls, with the exception of the 2 true freshmen, they've got multiple national title rings on their fingers. They know what it takes this point in the season. They know what it takes to get the job done at this time of the year. Now it's just a matter of going out there and executing. And the best part about it is they do not have to leave the state of Oklahoma. They do not have to leave within about 20 miles of Norman. So Sooner Nation is going to be there for the entire ride. It's going to be a hell of a lot of fun to watch.
Reading off all the names, especially the ones in the senior class, just reminded me of a graphic that we have coming out later this week on our Twitter account. At the
it's nice. Pod. I'd buy it right now.
It's pretty cool.
Pretty sick.
You'll want to see it, so make sure you're following there. As far as the Norman Regional goes, Oklahoma's going to face off against Cleveland State, a team that was really in the middle of the pack in their conference. I think the Horizon League, and they ended up winning the tournament to make it there. There's really nothing that stands out about them. I don't know how much you want to preview them, or Boston's kind of interesting. They got a great ERA, but Oregon, not a tough matchup here, really.
No, it's a very favorable matchup for Oklahoma in this regional. Anytime that you're, the number 2 overall seed, you're not going to get the best quality competition that's going to be coming. But don't tell Patty Gasso that, because she's going to refute that claim. But yeah, we can touch on some of these opponents just vaguely a little bit. Obviously, Cleveland State, that's the first matchup that Oklahoma is going to have to deal with on Friday night. The Horizon League tournament champions. First postseason appearance for Cleveland State since 2009. And, Adam, I know that this team was able to, kind of be a bid stealer making it into the postseason here, but 2024 hadn't exactly been viewed as a banner type season for Cleveland State, which finished the regular season with an 18-23 record, 5 games below 500. However, the Vikings were able to enter the conference tournament as the number 3 overall seed. They won 3 straight games to make it to the championship round. I believe they lost the first game to Northern Kentucky, which kind of set up a winner-take-all matchup, and then they ultimately came out victorious and found their way into the postseason play. So only 24 home runs collectively as a team this year. I think that you could probably look at Oklahoma's top 2 hitters. And they have more than 24 total. Team batting average of .246. That's just simply not going to get it done this time of year. So again, on paper, this is a very lopsided affair that Oklahoma is going to be matched up with on Friday night. You fast forward, ultimately, if the top 2 seeds win on Friday, that sets up a matchup for Oklahoma and Oregon on Saturday. Oregon 28-19 overall, 13-10 in the Pac-12. They lost a series to UCLA. They lost the series to Stanford. They did take 2 out of 3. Common opponent here. OU did take care of business against Washington earlier in the season. Oregon did take 2 out of 3 from Washington in the Pac-12 this year. They did lose, however, in one of the early rounds of the Pac-12 tournament to Utah. So even though this is a little bit of a down season for Oregon, this is still going to be, somewhat of a pretty quality, softball team that's coming to Norman. And the best storyline of all, I think, outside of just Oklahoma going for their 4th straight national championship, with that journey starting this weekend, is the fact that we've got head coach for Oregon, Melissa Lombardi, who had spent many seasons on Patty Gasso's staff as the pitching coach before getting her opportunity to take the head ball coach position out there in Eugene. Melissa Lombardi is going to have an opportunity to come back this weekend, and I can't tell you how exciting it's got to be, not just for Patty Gasso welcoming back an old coach and an old friend, but the fact that Melissa Lombardi is going to be able to come in and see and play at Loves Field. Really a complex, a facility that really her efforts as a pitching coach, she helped build this program and get it to where Oklahoma was able to really kind of take that next step and have the premier facility in all of college softball. So it's going to be a lot of fun to Melissa Lombardi. And then, Adam, let's talk Boston University here. I always think Red Sox. I think maybe Boston hockey. But let's talk about some BU softball here. 52-4-1,
incredible,
undefeated in conference play for the Terriers. Patriot League champions. The lineup, Adam. It's honestly, I think that Boston might be kind of the other. I don't want to say they're the best team. Ultimately, we'll find that out this weekend. But Boston's lineup, they've got 3 Patriot League Players of the Year in that batting lineup in Lauren Kelleher, Kayla Raunchin, and Caitlin Coker. Anytime that you've got 3 Players of the Year, you're obviously doing something right. But the thing that's going to give them a chance this upcoming weekend, and the thing that's really kind of been the driving force for this softball team all season long on the way to winning 50-plus games, is the fact that they've got a team ERA of 1.26. That is by far and away the best in the country right now. You look at their pitching staff right now. I've got the graphic up here in front of me. 27-3, 17-1, and 8-0. They've got what is it? A little over 600 strikeouts to just 100 walks, or 413 strikeouts to 102 walks. So this is a very, very good pitching staff. it just kind of boils down to, now that they're taking a step up in competition, they're going to be facing Oregon. If they have a chance to face Oklahoma, what's it going to look like when you're having to face, these power four type lineups in college softball? But make no mistake about it, this is a very favorable matchup for Oklahoma this upcoming weekend. I would expect nothing less but for them to win 3 ball games and take this thing to the Supers.
Yeah, Boston's an interesting team there because you look at that team ERA and the overall record, and you're like, wow, that is so impressive.
Yeah.
But they roll into Norman with the 168th ranked strength of schedule, and pretty much anybody that they played that was any good, like Duke, for example, they lost. Now they did lose those games by 1 or 2 runs. It's often like 2-0, 4-2. Like their pitching still is very, very good. So I think they'll give the Ducks all they can handle if they don't actually win that game to potentially set up a matchup there with Oklahoma on Saturday. But I agree. I think this is a 3-0 weekend for Oklahoma. And we should be able to get out of here without too much drama. Now, I guess my question to you is, are you throwing Kelly Maxwell on Saturday, on Friday? Or in my mind, I think I go Nicole May on Friday. Nicole May and like Carly Keeney, for example.
I 100% agree with you. Cleveland State, any of Oklahoma's top 4 to 5 pitchers, you should be able to go out there and limit CSU to just a couple of runs, if not a shutout. But like we talked about just a couple of minutes ago, Adam, if Oklahoma's swinging the bat as well as they have been for the last week or so, this game will be over by about the 2nd or 3rd inning. So I wouldn't necessarily waste Kelly Maxwell. I wouldn't even throw Kirsten Deal in this situation as well. Go out there, take care of business, knock off CSU, and then set yourself up to either take on Oregon or take on a Boston. It's going to take me all weekend to really kind of wrap my mind around it. When I think of Boston, I don't think of softball. I think of Mike Ruzioni. I think of Jack O'Callahan, the Bruins, Red Sox, all this. But it's going to be a lot of fun to watch a team from the Northeast kind of, come down here and take on the Sooners.
Last question before we jump over to baseball. Oklahoma or the field as it stands today to win it all?
Fuck.
I mean, on one hand, you've got other teams on the other side of the bracket beating each other up. On OU side of the bracket, I don't know. Tennessee is good, but I don't know. Maybe it's just the fact that we haven't played them and haven't lost them this year, but it doesn't scare me nearly as much as Texas or OSU.
If I had my last dollar to bet, statistically, it's probably a better option to play the percentages of taking the field. And I know that this has been a unique season for Oklahoma softball compared to the last 4. But the thing that's got to give Oklahoma fans a ton of confidence, it's not the fact that you've got a really good pitching staff right now that's done extremely well over the last couple of weeks, led by Kelly Maxwell, who's been in these big time matchups. She's pitched multiple games in the Women's College World Series. It's not the fact that you've got a senior driven team up and down this lineup that have won 3 consecutive national championships. They know what it takes. They know ultimately what they're going to have to do to do this. That's not why I'm going to take Oklahoma in this situation. Yeah, I'm picking Oklahoma to win the national championship. Big surprise. But the reason I'm doing so, it's that lady down there in the white visor in the third base box. It's Natty Patty season for a reason. That's the hallmark. That's the trademark. That's the bumper sticker right now that everybody's flying around. It's Natty Patty season. Oklahoma's going to go on. They're going to win their 4th consecutive national championship. Might not look as dominant at times, but if you're going to make me pick, I'm riding with Patty in this situation. Oklahoma gets it done.
Don't
you dare.
A week ago, it would have been an easy, not even think about it. No, I'm taking the field for sure. I'm still not taking Oklahoma, but I'm closer to that than I was before.
So you're taking the field?
I'm still taking the field, but I'm closer to saying, okay, I think OU is going to win another one. I just want to see more of it. I want to see another weekend of clean softball, dominant pitching. And then when they go off and they play Florida State in super regionals, potentially, if Florida State's able to make it out there, then I'll start feeling even better about it because I know the competition's getting better. But as of right now, I'm just taking the safe numbers there of the field.
There's too many things going in Oklahoma's favor right now. They're peaking at the right time. They've got a senior, they've got a veteran team. They know what it takes this time of year. They got the best coach in the country, probably the best coach of all time in collegiate softball. And they've got the state of Oklahoma right here in their backyard that's going to be, taking them all the way. So until some team out there shows me that they can take 2 out of 3 from Oklahoma in OKC at Devon Park, I'm riding with the Sooners.
What about at Love's Field?
I thought we were already projecting.
Okay.
We're already
I'm just saying OSU did that in Norman. So somebody has done that at least this year.
Well, it's postseason now.
Okay.
It's called the poke choke for a reason, Adam.
Yeah. Hey, it certainly happened last weekend. Let's talk baseball. But before we do that, Tyler, I want to tell you about our sponsor here at the main line, and it is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states across the country. That includes Oklahoma and Texas. And Prize Picks is really simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. Tyler, here's a good example of this. Who's the best player on the Avs right now?
Cale Makar.
Okay, so Makar, I know nothing about hockey, but a lot of people probably watching or listening to this on Wednesday before the Stars Avs face off. I don't know what game it is in the series there, but all you do is go to Prize Picks, choose more or less on a number of different categories such as shots on goal, time on ice, goalie saves, and more. Do the same thing for the Thunder as well. They're playing in Game 6 there, or I guess Game 5 up in Oklahoma City against the Mavs. Same thing with SGA. More points, more rebounds, assists. Or if you're a hater, do the opposite for Luka. Less points, less assists, so on and so forth for whatever they put there. And you can earn quite a bit of money doing that. So all you have to do is download the app today. Use code MAINLINE for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's just downloading the app and then using the code MAINLINE for a first deposit match of up to $100. So someone who's doing quite well right now, of course, is OU baseball, winning the Big 12 championship. First time winning the regular season Big 12 in the entire history of the Big 12 for the Sooners, despite having many good teams in the past. But Oklahoma just taking care of business, like doing the things that you thought, okay, years past, like they should sweep this team, and they just didn't do it. Oklahoma's doing that right now, and it's really impressive.
Yeah, very impressive performance for Skip Johnson's bunch over the weekend, sweeping the Bears. This lineup, 47 runs scored in 3 games. That is unbelievable. Adam, I kind of want to throw this over to you as we kind of recap the Baylor series and kind of look ahead here. We talk about John Spikerman, and let's talk about the impact here. Having him healthy back in the lineup for the West Virginia, for the Oklahoma State series, what would that have meant for this Oklahoma baseball team at the time? And also, it's pretty clear it makes a huge impact when he's in the lineup. Talk about John Spikerman for this baseball team.
Yeah, John Spikerman hitting 407 on the year. He's not going to show up on many of the Big 12 statistics on their site right now, simply because he doesn't have enough at-bats to qualify for some of those yet. But I don't know if Cincinnati here will give him enough to get into the criteria there, because he missed about a month of play. But man, it's like one player doesn't swing things for you. And we got a lot of valuable playing time for Jason Walk, who continues to be excellent when he does have the opportunity to kind of platoons back and forth with Kendall Pettis. But man, Spikerman, like, you just wonder, like, hey, if he was playing up in Stillwater, or if he was playing against West Virginia, like, do we even lose those series? Or even if he was, playing, I know he played against Texas a few weeks ago, but if he was fully healthy and in rhythm, what kind of difference would that have made? Because he's a guy that's just unstoppable right now. He's Big 12 Player of the Week this past weekend, hit 5 extra base hits, had a grand slam, which normally we play the highlights, but I thought, what better way to show that particular highlight than to let Toby tell you about it if you're listening on the pod, or you can see it here on YouTube.
2. Long fly ball to right. Did he get it all? Apodaca, track, ball. That's a grand slam. John Spikerman empties them. And Oklahoma's got full control of game 2. They lead it 9-1. Wow.
Toby Rowland and Sooner Sports Properties with the call there on that one. So yeah, special weekend from John Spikerman. And I don't know if people really look at him much for Big 12 Player of the Year, or maybe even a first team spot, simply because of the injury and the amount of time that he missed there. But he might be the best in the conference.
Another player who I can't believe we almost could have led tonight's show with, anytime that you hit a grand slam, much less a in the park grand slam. Talk about Bryce Madron, Adam. Fantastic performance from Bryce. He continues to stay hot in the lineup.
Yeah. I feel like Bryce has kind of been, just overall throughout the year, one of the more consistent guys.
Yes.
There's different moments where you thought, okay, like Carmichael's the best hitter, or maybe Michael Snyder's the best hitter, or maybe it's, Jackson Nicholas. But Bryce Madron maybe hasn't had like the 1 week or 2 week stretch where you're like, okay, he's the best on the team. He's just been constant for the most part, which is all you could ask for out of him. He's been excellent there. And As we'll take a look at the highlight here, again, called by Toby, but Bryce Madron getting the inside the park grand slam, something you might never see ever again in baseball in an entire lifetime. It's pretty incredible. Part of it, I think, is Baylor's bad. They're bad at baseball. They're not
Really
coached
bad.
well. They were constantly diving for balls when they really shouldn't have been diving, or letting them hop right in front of them when they should have been coming up and getting the fly out. So makes you really appreciate the way that this Oklahoma ball club is coached defensively, and also the amount of speed that comes out of this outfield. But yeah, the grand slam for Bryce Madron in Game 3 against Baylor was just absolutely incredible. We'll roll that here.
Fly ball center field, down, and that'll go all the way to the wall. 1 run is in. 2 runs are in. Here comes Spikerman. He'll score. Madron, he's being waved home. He is safe. It's an inside the park grand slam. Oh, mama. This might just be a team of destiny.
Yeah,
It doesn't get any better. It doesn't get any better than
T-Row. A team of destiny. Yeah. Again, Baylor, terrible team. Like, they're trying to pack it up. They're not going to the Big 12 tournament. They're not going to qualify. Like, they probably just wanted to go home at that point. But that's what you want to see out of a team in Oklahoma who should be the best in the conference, who could be one of the top teams in the entire country. And they just went out and throttled the Bears. And it wasn't perfect by any stretch, but they took care of business offensively. We're rolling right now. We're the only team in the conference that's hitting over 300 in Big 12 play. We have 55 more runs than the next closest team. We're the hardest to strike out in the entire conference. Like, this offense right now is humming at another level, and it's really impressive of what both Skip and Reggie Willits have gotten out of this ball club as we're really hitting our peak, at the right time of year.
Adam, I led the baseball segment here talking about the fact that this was a lineup. Oklahoma scoring 47 runs over the course of the 3 games against the Bears. On the flip side, Oklahoma and the pitching staff, they give up 15 runs during the 3-game series. What's kind of your thoughts, your analysis on the pitching staff's performance, and just kind of what does Skip Johnson and this pitching staff have to do to kind of tighten things up a little bit as we kind of look towards postseason play?
Yeah, I think, with Braden Davis and Kyson Witherspoon giving up some runs and some hits early on, probably not their strongest outings, but they did get the job done regardless. We were able to get them both stretched out in games 1 and 2. And when those guys did come out of the game, the bullpen gave up 0 runs the rest of the way in games 1 and 2. So I think that's kind of the storyline is, okay, the bullpen was excellent. Will Carson came in. Dylan Crooks looks like one of the best, out of the bullpen right now. Yeah. Carter Campbell had a good outing as well. He's one that I've wanted to see a little bit more out of. So as a whole, I think the staff, as long as they continue to limit walks and the defense limits their errors like they have been so far, I'm feeling good about them. Where I'm more concerned with this team right now is like, what are we doing with Sunday? Because the last 3 weekends, we've had 3 different starters. Grant Stevens against Texas, Carson Atwood at Texas Tech, and then Jamie Hitt here against Baylor. And I don't know if that was an opportunity where Skip said, okay, I want to get Hitt in there more and see if we can build his confidence against a not very good team. Well, didn't necessarily work out that way. He got rocked pretty hard, pretty quick, only pitching 1 inning there. So it's really been a lot of bullpen games. And so I don't really know what we're going to do there. What's our strategy? Because you're definitely going to need that third guy to step up, whether it be a regional, a super regional, or once you get to the College World Series, you need a third starter badly because you're going to be playing in a regional, for example, you're going to be playing 4 games. Like, you got to figure something out there. And we don't have an answer right now.
You almost have to wonder if Skip Johnson, with regards to the Sunday, starting spot, I'm not sure if it's a situation to where he feels like he doesn't have the guy, or is essentially he's giving opportunities to a couple different individuals to try and take that position, to be that, that permanent Sunday guy going forward here. We'll see how this thing plays out. If there's one thing that I know, I trust Skip Johnson when it comes to pitching. So, Adam, 2 things here before we get out of this. Oklahoma sweeps the Bears. They climb 4 spots higher all the way up to the number 12 ranking in the country right now with just a couple of weeks left to play here. Positioning themselves to host not just a regional, but possibly be a top 8 seed. How realistic is this?
Yeah, I feel like hosting a regional is basically a lock at this point. Like, you won the Big 12 conference. It's the number 3 RPI conference in the country. It is a step below ACC and SEC, but it's considerably better than pretty much any other conference out there right now. So I think that alone locks your top top 16 seed.
Mm-hmm.
Top 8, I think, is more where the conversation is happening right now. And ECU getting swept on the road at Tulane this past weekend, that's a positive result for Oklahoma. Florida State dropping a game at Pitt the past weekend, that's a positive result for Oklahoma. So there's going to be a couple matchups that I think if you're an Oklahoma fan and you're watching what's going on the scoreboard, or maybe you're scrolling around on ESPN Plus this weekend, that you're going to want to be taking a look at. It's probably going to be, what does Florida State do hosting Georgia Tech this weekend? Georgia Tech team that probably is on the outside looking in on the postseason. Maybe they have a little bit to play for. Georgia hosting Florida. Georgia top 5 in the RPI. Not the best SEC record though, but I think they're one you're going to want to look out for. And Florida's going to be desperate, probably playing for their postseason life there. And then Wake Forest at NC State. Wake Forest is a team that I think you definitely want to lose that series. The Wolfpack being able to take that home in Raleigh would be an incredible result for Oklahoma because, again, Wolfpack, they're fighting for probably a host seed potentially as well. So I think Oklahoma's right there. I think if they take the series at Cincinnati, it's almost to the point where I'm feeling confident, like, okay, we're probably going to be in that 8, 9, 10 range. And then if you do some damage in the Big 12 tournament, just don't lose, go 0-2 or anything like that. I think you're in good shape to probably get one of those top 8 seeds. It might be number 8, but hey, like that would be an incredible accomplishment to have the opportunity to not just host regionals, but also super regionals in Norman.
That's 41 minutes of Diamond Sports Talk. You're not going to find that anywhere else on the OU beat, that's for sure. So, Adam, I didn't really have anything else I want to discuss here. I know the men's basketball, kind of added a transfer portal entry that. Well, it is what it is. Football, nothing really anything that we wanted to lead the show off with. So we'll give baseball and softball the credit where it's due. And let's go take care of business again this weekend.
Let's do it. Thanks so much, everyone, for making us part of your weekly routine. We know there's a lot of content options out there, so we greatly appreciate everyone watching us here on YouTube and listening on the podcast later on. We'll see you all next week for another episode of The Main Line.